Freedom is not free. Discover what it takes. It's time to tap and move forward.
Hello and welcome to Tap and Move Forward. I'm your host, Lynn Shelley. Dave Acosta is back. In episode 8, I interviewed him about his extensive tactical experience. He goes into depth on how to unleash the excellence in your DNA. This episode focuses on his skill set as an authority on active shooters and personal protection. In this capacity, Dave has been recognized nationally and has been featured on many different media outlets. Dave and his team have also created a program and trained over 6,000 teachers to date in his effective fight-back techniques, arming teachers with the skill set to respond if an active shooter comes to their school. This episode's Warrior Challenge is a direct quote from Dave in the episode. He said, "We will learn to feel better about ourselves when we overtly commit an action every day that benefits someone else, especially if it's a perfect stranger. Your challenge is to start finding ways and taking actions to benefit someone else, particularly if they're a stranger. To unleash your inner warrior, you must take action." Dave challenges you to at least 3 times do something that benefits a stranger that you wouldn't normally have done. Stay accountable by letting me know what you did on the Tap and Move Forward website or social media sites. To understand more about how this applies to active shooting, here's the interview with Dave Acosta. So Dave Acosta, I'm excited to have you back on the show again. You invited me to one of your fight back trainings, which is why I wanted you on the show again. I have had lots of active shooter training in the military. It's a pretty regular training. So I thought I knew something about active shooters. But I learned so much from your seminar, like so much, which I really wanted to have you on the show again to talk more about it because I think it's really valuable information. Even just the simplest things about understanding some of the profiling that goes into active shooters.
Right, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, to start off, can you talk a little bit about if you're in an active shooter situation, what kind of things you should be taking into account about that shooter?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, also let me just start with this. So we just did a video that was funded by Workers' Comp and in partnership with the University of Utah.
Yeah, I saw it.
And yeah, so the final edit is coming out, like the final there, and I'm sure they'll give me permission to give you a link that you could share with your listeners.
Great.
Because that is what we do, is we walk through what is this process that you and I are going to talk about. Even though it's only 5 minutes, I think it's very informative, and it kind of gets the wheels turning in your head about, okay, well, what does this mean for me? So you had a chance to come out, and by the way, we really appreciated your help because you were very helpful on that. But you had a chance to come out and see probably one of the I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but a group of teachers, right? You saw us training teachers. Think about what it takes to be a teacher. I mean, you have to be more patient than the average person. You have to have a little more love than the average person. You have to be willing to do something because you're passionate about it, not because of the pay, because we know they don't make any money. And they deal with a bunch of idiot parents sometimes, and then I'm sure there are kids that try them, and yet they go every day and they pour their heart and soul into taking care of our kids. So these people are amazing. And we're going there to say, look, in a worst case scenario of an active shooter in your school, here's what you need to do. So of course we talk about, the city of Houston created a program called Run, Hide, Fight, which has been adopted nationwide, but that's very generic. And so if a corporation says they have the Run, Hide, Fight program, but no one has been trained on it, then they don't have it. Okay, because it has to be specific. That has to be applied specifically to the environment you work in. So with the teachers, we're like, okay, well, what does that mean for you? And so run would be to escape, just get out of the situation. But again, what you saw was we had teachers. You can't run away with 32 little kids.
Right.
So it's different. They almost, almost always, especially at that, elementary school level, they're going to probably look for an opportunity to barricade with a locked door and get out of sight. So they go right to what's called hide. So there's run, that didn't work. Now they're in hide mode. They barricade in their rooms. And by the way, for your listeners, in Utah, and I have significant experience training teachers in Utah, well over 6,000 at this point. Most Utah schools are ready to some degree, and I mean this in like a positive way. They're ready with doors that lock and allow them to barricade. And the average police response to a school shooting is, in Utah, in most places, is going to be 3 minutes. That's amazing.
That's really fast.
It's really fast. So our law enforcement is amazing, and the schools are getting better. The teachers are starting to get training. There's some protocols. So when they hide, they're barricading in that room. But if they were in the hall and they didn't have a chance to get to a room, they got to decide where do they go. And we tell them, don't go in a bathroom because it's one way in or one way out. But then again, if they're being shot at and they don't have a choice, they're going to go in that bathroom. And that leads us to the third thing, and this is what we specialize in, is if you couldn't get away and your hiding place wasn't good, you may have to fight back. You may physically have to engage this person. So we teach them about 90-degree angles, how to use that to their advantage, how to be very aggressive in this technique where they're literally inside arm's length and they're ambushing the attacker and taking them by surprise. And even before you went and saw this applied, I'm sure you were like, Dave, there's no way. You're thinking of a 110-pound kindergarten teacher disarming a full-grown man with a gun. And yet, by the end of that training, I want to know what you thought. Did you not see the complete change from doubt and not just doubt, but all of the apprehension that the teachers were expressing in their body language when we started?
Yes.
They didn't even want to be there.
Right.
But at the end of it, they were all clamoring, give me another shot. Let me do it again.
Yes.
I'm getting better at this. Tell me, I want your perspective. This is your first time being exposed to this. What did you think about that?
Well, I think that there's a fair amount of that is just because there's like this thing that we do. I don't know enough about psychology to speak to it, to why, but there's almost like a shutting down that happens when something seems scary or unattainable to us. And so instead of like being curious or wanting to pursue it, a lot of times we'll just shut it down. Mm-hmm. Like it's too much.
Yes.
It's too hard. There's just like a boundary that we put up. That's not me. That's for the police force or whatever. So you start labeling it as a job for somebody else, and that there's a distancing between you and that action. And so I think there's a fair amount that the people there are just like, first of all, it's like, well, that's not really me. I'm not confrontational. I'm not pushy. I'm not, I'm not a bully. So yeah. I'm not going to do that. And I think you made really good points when you start talking about teachers and that they have to be passionate and that they ultimately are the ones responsible for all of those kids. Like the parents are expecting that teacher to be responsible, and putting that responsibility back on that teacher and them realizing that there could be a moment in time where they don't have support there yet. Mm-hmm. And they might be the only hope for those kids. And that means that puts pressure on that boundary or that wall saying that's not me. And and that lifts that up. So then it pushes it open into, well, I at least need to have some understanding about this world and how to operate in that and how I could respond. And then you give them tools that they can actually use, and then they try it, and after trying it a few times, then you just see that confidence growing, and then inevitably it changes their whole demeanor, because now they've claimed a piece of themselves that they had shut down before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do shut down, right? Because when we have time to think about a situation, especially a worst case scenario, some people's minds don't go there because they just in their mind they are not that person. They're like,
Right.
it's just not who I am. But here's where I counter this. It's in all of our DNA to be that person. So don't deny yourself, because I can't think of a mother that if her child fell in a swollen, cold river, doesn't jump in without hesitation. We have a river here, this Provo River. We've had children fall in and mothers go in after them, and the mothers and the children perish. I'm telling you, it's 1 in a million that you're going to save that kid out of that river, and probably the same percentage of chance of surviving for you as well. But mom is not assessing her swim skills, the speed of the current, or how cold the water is. She's acting because she's the only chance that kid has. And so I'm like, okay, what is the difference? What's the difference? I'll tell you what the difference is. If you had to, in that worst case scenario, take a 90-degree angle behind something, and a guy was going to come in to execute these kids, and you attacked him, you have a better chance of surviving that than you do going in that river. So we just have to be willing to have a shift in paradigm in the way that we see and do things, and the way that we think culturally. Because culturally in the United States, when someone comes in a room with a gun and starts shooting, everybody believes that guy's in charge.
Yes.
And they're shooting within feet of people
Right.
that could tackle them. Now, before this Virginia shooting, the last 3 shootings we had happened in about a 14-day period, so 2 weeks. We had a shooting at a high school where a high school senior tackled the shooter, and even though he was shot and killed in the process, it allowed another student to jump on the shooter and disarm him, and they saved probably 20 lives of other students because they did something. Those kids are heroes. Then the day before that was the University of North Carolina shooting, in Charlotte, where another college student immediately charged and tackled the shooter. And again, he was shot in the process and ended up dying, but that allowed another student to jump in. And together, they disarmed the guy, and they saved lives. And then a week and a half later, in Oregon, you have a high school teacher that tackles the kid as he's pulling a shotgun out from under his jacket to execute kids. He tackles them full speed, and not one shot is fired, and he saves these kids. When people act without hesitation on behalf of others, we win. We win. The reason that mass shootings have been so successful in the past is because nobody challenges the shooter. Now, we're talking about people being unarmed, because I always get the question, well, what if I was armed? Well, what about army teachers? Look, I'm not having that discussion with you, because 99% of the people present during a mass shooting are unarmed. So my focus is, again, I'm a statistics guy. Statistically speaking, no one's going to be armed. So what should we do? What can you do? So run. If you can escape, escape. Have a primary route if it's at your workplace, and a secondary route already in your head. Okay? If you can't, then hide. Get behind something that will stop a bullet and that keeps you out of sight. If you can't get behind cover, which is something that would stop a bullet, at least find something that will conceal you and keep you out of the shooter's view. But worst case scenario, where you have no choice but to fight back, put yourself in a position of advantage, so when that shooter is close by, you're ambushing them from a 90-degree angle. And then fight like you were fighting for your own child's life.
So when you say the 90-degree angle, you're bringing that up because you don't want to come straight on, because then they can just shoot you. But if you come from the side, then
I'm glad that you asked that. When I say 90-degree angle, I'm picturing someone that's already hidden, and now the shooter's walking. Like, let's say a student ran to a bathroom.
Like, you would want to wait till the shooter was close enough that
you're hidden, you're out of sight, you're going to ambush.
Yeah.
So yeah, then 90-degree angle gives you the best advantage. But I'm glad you asked that question, because if a guy came into the cafeteria, look, you can only shoot one person at a time.
Yeah.
So he can't shoot 10 of the kids that happen to be within 10 feet. Not at once.
Right.
So, and I'm thinking high school age, right? And maybe there's a teacher there because we know that has happened in the past. If someone that was close enough, if he's shooting in one direction and they're close enough to tackle him and they make that move, they've saved lives. And then we can disarm him. So all I'm saying is if you are close enough and you have the opportunity, take it. It will save lives.
And there was just that recently where I think it was you that posted it that I saw, the guy that was like yelling at the shooter and just like freaked out at him and
that was
like scared him, and the shooter actually dropped his gun and left his gun.
What a lot of people don't
away.
know is that was the New Zealand shooting at the first mosque.
Oh,
this
really?
guy went to 2 different places.
Right.
In the first one, there was a guy, a Pakistani gentleman, who challenged the shooter. He knew he was going to die, and he didn't care. He challenged him.
But he didn't die.
He didn't die. He turned the tables on this guy, and there was a malfunction with a weapon, and the weapon he'd already fired, which was empty now, I believe it was a shotgun, this gentleman picked it up and started chasing the bad guy with it. And the guy ran and got in his car and fled, and then the guy threw it and broke the windshield of the car. I mean, he went crazy, and the shooter fled, and then he went to the next location where he had more success, unfortunately. But it's unexpected when we fight back and act in a way, an aggressive, without hesitation manner. It's bad guys have lag time, just like anybody does. When the unexpected happens, lag time is them. It's the time it takes for them to wrap their brain around something that's unexpected. Mm-hmm. Like in the case of a teacher, this, and I say small because I always go, let's go, worst case scenario is you got the smallest teacher against the biggest guy. She's still capable.
Yeah. If
she understands a very fundamental technique.
I love that you talked about moments of weakness for the active shooter, because I've never heard someone talk about that.
They're
but
weak.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
They have to reload. Oftentimes they'll have ammo or extra guns in their car or in a bag in the hall. Like, they are turning their backs
and going out there,
or they are stopping what they're doing, and depending on their tactical skill, which probably isn't that great, they are taking time to look down to find their next magazine to reload. They're just sitting there.
Big gaps. I mean, an untrained shooter, it's a 5-second magazine reload for an untrained shooter. That's a lot of time. Do you know how much ground you can cover in 5 seconds? Cho at Virginia Tech had 2 handguns. And when he would go empty, he would go out into the hall and reload from a duffel bag in the hall. Same thing with these kids at Columbine. They had duffel bags. They would, a weapon would go dry. They'd go get a different weapon. The shooter in New Zealand was a little more advanced in that he had weapons on him. So he would shoot and then he would throw a rifle down, like the shotgun, and then he had a sling with an AR and he'd shoot that one and then he'd drop that. And he was literally dropping weapons as he went. It wasn't going back to the duffel bag. But at one point he did a magazine reload. It's on the video. I watched it. And while he's stepping back to reload the magazine, a person that's fleeing doesn't know he's in the hall and runs into him. And he drops his gun. And before the gun, it doesn't fall flat on the ground. He loses grip of the gun. The other guy that ran into him doesn't know what to do, so he falls down, and now the shooter finishes reloading and shoots him. Oh. So he knocked the gun right out of his hand. It's on the video.
But then just didn't do anything.
Well, he had no idea. That. I mean, I don't ever blame a victim, because if they haven't been told that they can do this, they don't consider it, because it doesn't cross their mind that they could grab a guy and fight him and disarm him, especially for a female.
Yeah.
But as soon as we show them how to do it, and again, you saw what we teach. It's no ninja trick. It doesn't take years of going to the MMA gym. I get a lot of people that ask me if I will introduce, if I will tell people that they have a women's personal defense course at their martial arts gym. I have a hard time doing that, because Very, very few people are going to invest the time and money it takes to be proficient in those things. I'm training teachers by giving them something so simple that makes sense to them that they can see it one time like you saw in a 2-hour class and leave and be proficient. Because at least they have a clue.
Right.
You know, let me tell you what I would compare that to, and then I see you have a question. But I got in a helicopter, and I had a client that I was with, and my job was to make sure that she got from A to B in a foreign country, and part of it was in the helicopter. So it was interesting because the helicopter pilot said, well, lucky for you, when she gets in the helicopter, you're not worried about robbery or any of those things that you worry about in this foreign country on the streets. You could just relax. And I'm like, that's not the way I see it. Because as good a pilot as he is, what if we crashed and we survived and the helicopter's on fire? I need to understand how the harness under works, especially if she's upside down. How can I get her out of that harness, and myself, in a helicopter filled with smoke? So what did I do? I made myself familiar with how the harness released for both of us. And then we flew and had a great trip, and there was no incident. But what I'm saying is, that's what I equate what we're teaching these teachers. We're simply showing them how to get the harness off. Mm-hmm. It's that simple of a technique. And so under stress, they can remember something that is that simple.
What else I love about what you're saying is that whole idea of the not knowing and shutting down, it sounds like what you've done is you purposefully look for it and you purposefully choose to give yourself understanding of what possible worst case scenario could happen, so there's no shutdown. No matter what happens, you have something to do. You're empowered with some sort of action.
You nailed it. You summed it all up right there. Because what you're saying, I'm thinking of what we did at South Summit School District, which was an amazing event where we actually had state risk management was there attending to watch this event. It was a big active shooter scenario, but we did it, hand in hand with the Summit County Sheriff's Office and Camas Police, and then the school district had teachers there, and it was amazing to watch these teachers operate at full speed because bad guys were coming in shooting blanks. It was crazy. They were so, once they were introduced to how to survive, it was like giving someone their favorite candy that they'd never had before. Because then they were like, give me more. And we watched these teachers think on their feet, and it was unbelievable. Even the SWAT commander from Summit County, he was just like telling me, he goes, Dave, I'm blown away. He's like, I never knew that the teachers were capable of what I'm seeing them do with confidence here. He's like, this is life-changing for them. And for him, as a responder, he's like, here, South Summit School District, he said, now I know if I respond to something here, these teachers are holding their own till we get there. He's like, it's awesome. So you're right. The more information they have, the more they look at this, and it's now not something that they want to put out of their mind. Now they're looking at it and going, man, if it happened this way, I could do this. If it happened that way, I could do that. They're starting to actually see it differently. It's really cool. It's a transition. It's a psychological transition.
Yes.
From potential victimhood to don't touch my kid, to that mom that's like, don't touch my kid. It's awesome.
You don't know who you're messing with.
Exactly.
It's a mama bear type.
That's what we say. We're just like, and I think we're now shifting into the corporate realm now. We're starting to do more in the corporate area. But teachers are easier because the mama bear thing is a no-brainer. All the teachers understand that. And if you're just giving them permission and showing them how mama bear can work, you don't have to do much more. They're willing.
Right. So, like, for example, in the mall setting, there's not the same level of protection.
So now it's on you. Now it's on you and your family. So in the mall setting, you have to know that you're on your own. Okay, the mall may not have a plan in place. If they do, the only people that would know what the plan is, because I just literally, now that you bring that up, let's back up for your listeners. I just spoke as the keynote international speaker at a security conference in Sao Paulo, Brazil, a few days ago. And the biggest clients there, this association, was people that deal with the day-to-day operations of a mall in Brazil. And the malls in Brazil are very high-end. It's a big, big business. And so what we talked about was, if you're going to have a plan mall-wide for an active shooter, that means every employee in every storefront needs to be trained on what the plan is. They need to know, are they pulling the gate down and locking people out? Or are they, if the shooter's not right where they're at, are they allowing people to come into their storefront and then locking it down, and then now they know that they're going to go to the back and they're going to barricade in another room in the back, or maybe there's a secret exit. I mean, what are the employees doing to help other innocent people that don't know the mall escape and guide them? Because I was asked by the mall people, they're like, what should we tell the employees? Shouldn't they run? And I said, what do you want the news story to be? How would you like it reflected? That the employees of the mall were helpful and guided people to the nearest exits? Or that everybody ran and everybody was on their own, including your security? I don't know what narrative you want. You have to choose. Are you going to ask that the mall employees, we don't ever want them to put themselves in danger, but if the shooter's not right there, are you going to say, hey, we want you to guide people to an exit, tell them where it is, or invite them in before you shut the gate and lock the guy out and then move them to the back out of sight? It's simple things like this that I'm saying, it's on you. I'll give you the information. You just decide which plan you want to run. But so going back to your original question, in the mall, I go to the mall and I just assume that no one in the mall knows what the hell to do. So I have a plan for me and my family. And growing up, my kids knew that if Dad said, duck, run, follow me, get behind me, go outside, meet me at the car, they never questioned it. They would never hang around and go, why, Dad, what's happening? They would just go. We trained that way. Now, a lot of it had to do that I was a cop in Vegas, and I had run into some people that we arrested from gangs in the mall. So we didn't want to have an issue where my kids couldn't escape the danger, but it translates to this too. But also in the mall, educate yourselves. Know where exits are as you're moving. If you ever had to get away from a bad situation in the mall, don't run into the bathroom because it's one way in, one way out. So anyway, definitely you're in charge of you when you're in a mall or a theater or a restaurant. What about workplace? What if you work in a government building, like just happened at, Virginia Beach? Or any building for that matter, but I'm just saying, one of the things that's important is, as you think of run, hide, fight, think of run, have a primary route of escape already in your head. Where's the first easiest route of escape from your office? What's your secondary? If that didn't work, what's your secondary? Ironically enough, this shooting at Virginia Beach, there was a lady who ran. She turned around and came back down the hall and yelled to her coworkers, too late, because he was right behind her. She saved their lives. They weren't able to execute a secondary route, but they were able to immediately barricade. She gave them the heads up to get in and barricade. So your primary route could be compromised. So then have a secondary route, and if that doesn't work, hide and barricade if possible. And then, the third thing would be to have a plan to retaliate, to counterattack physically at close range. And don't ever spray or throw things. It doesn't work. You're not going to throw something. The only thing throwing something at a shooter does is say, shoot me next. And people will say, well, what if I had a bat? What are the chances you're going to hit him perfectly to knock him out? Not very good. If you can hit him with a bat, you can tackle him. If you can tackle him, you can subdue him pretty quickly, especially if it's unexpected, and especially if you have help. So a lot of the striking and throwing, I'm not a fan of it because it's very low probability. So we want to really take their ability to be mobile and accurate. We want to take it out quickly. But again, I'm telling you what you saw these teachers that had no experience, 2 hours later, what did you think of some of these little gals?
Well, I want to rewind a little bit. I think it's really important that you talked about knowing where exits are in the mall,
Yeah.
because it can be really easy to get lost in the mall, and there's more exits than just the obvious ones that you come in. And like they usually have side doors or hallways with exits, and because you get in the mall and it's just like store, and you don't realize sometimes where those exits are. But being aware of those and even just taking time to be aware of it can be a big.
I'm glad you brought that up. We had an interesting experience. We went to a mall, the Fashion Place Mall, and we noticed that, and it's not just there, it's other places too, but we noticed that the exits, some were green and some were red. And so we were trying to figure out what that meant. Because, for me, my thought, which is logical, I think, was red means this way. Green means this is an external exit. So red is kind of like follow this to the exit. And then when you see a green one, that means that door goes outside. That made sense to me. I was excited. I'm like, dude, I think if you follow the red ones and when you see a green one, that gets you outside. Turns out that's not the case. It's that I'm trying to remember which one they're going to. They're transitioning. I think the new bright green ones are easier to see than the red ones are when there's smoke. So it has nothing to do with one being better than the other.
And they had half and half. They just happen.
Yeah, but they're not the only one. There's a lot of buildings with red and green exits, and so we were wondering this, and it's interesting. So I would tell you, if you started to look around now and you start to see that, I'm giving you a clue right now. All we could find is that is the reason for that.
I was wondering if the red ones were if there were alarm exits, if you push it would be a smoke alarm, and then the green ones were good to go. Anyway.
But in a mall, so the exits, not every exit sign is an exit. It's pointing you towards an exit. So you're trying to find the door that gets you outside if possible.
Yeah.
So it's good, on the days that you are at the mall in the future, or even at a Walmart or any other store, look around and try to understand the exits that lead directly outside. We did an experiment one day. We took a group of people and we went into a Walmart superstore. And I said, all right, everybody in our group, I said, everyone go. We're going to meet in an hour for lunch, and I want to know how many exits from the Walmart to the outside, like outside. How many exits are there? And in the Walmart superstore that we were in, there were 24 exits.
Wow.
24, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
But you got to know where they're at.
Yeah, I would not.
There's exit.
No way I would know that there's that many.
There's an exit outside almost. At least in this case, there was an exit that led outside on, I think, all sides of the building. At least one. And then in a lot of the sides, there were multiple exits. But, I mean, you didn't know. Could you run into the meat area, the butcher shop? Yeah, run in the butcher shop, go through the back. You're out. Same thing with the bakery. Same thing over by where they do the auto stuff. And the break room, and on and on and on. And so it's not that there's no way of escaping, it's that we don't know what to do when we freeze.
I think that's important to bring up too, because that would be socially off limits, right? Like socially not acceptable for you to just walk behind their meat counter, or you know, like that would be seen as rude. But in that type of situation, who cares?
Exactly. Who cares? It's just you didn't even know that. Now I told you that. So now I'm not guaranteed because I'm speaking on behalf of one building, and I know they try and follow a pattern, but I don't know all the other buildings.
Right. But even that can give you some form of concealment.
Gives you an idea. Oh, 100%.
If you're not, if there's not much around, going back behind there. Not to mention they might have more metal back there, so
not only metal.
They might have cover. Even.
Do you know what they have in freezer areas? If you run behind like a freezer area, like into, I think of Macy's, which is a grocery store here in Utah. If you run back through their meat area into Macy's, they have these curtains that hang down. They're plastic, and you have to push through them. Have you ever seen that? Yeah, almost all places where there's like cold storage behind them, they have this plastic that you walk through. It's real thick and it hangs down. It's a form of Lexan, and it's very bullet retardant. It slows bullets down.
Interesting.
And if you have a couple layers of it, it will stop a 9mm, no problem. Again, depends on the thickness of it and stuff, but they have usually, when you're going back there, you're pushing through these because they keep the cold in, and it's not just one door back and forth. I've seen them hanging in a lot of different places, and I'm like, man, I just run behind that stuff. But still, in the back, there are different places to hide.
Oh wait, they're like clear plastic?
Yeah, clear
I
plastic.
know what you're talking about.
And it hangs down, and it's thick.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We've done ballistic experiments on it. It's amazing stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you brought up in the training that I thought was really interesting was the typical accuracy rate.
Yeah.
Depending on whether it's a rifle or a handgun.
Yeah. So when we say, run, one of the things that we talk about is the different weapon systems that we see most often in the U.S. You're seeing like an AR style rifle or something like that, or a handgun. Well, the rifle is very accurate at long distances, and so just about anybody can be fairly accurate with that rifle in their hand at 100 yards, and a school hallway could be 100 yards long. You still need to be careful because if they, take any time to aim it, they can be very accurate. And then the handgun is much less accurate. So the further away you are, the better chance you have as long as you stay on the move. But the statistic of the fact that in the U.S., mass shooters average a 50% hit ratio blows my mind. Cops in the U.S. don't average a 50% hit ratio at 7 to 10 feet. We don't. And by the way, I'm going to give you the reason behind that before I have all the cops freaking out on me. I'm not talking about a SWAT guy. I'm not talking about certain, situations where you're going in as the aggressor. What you have to understand is these cops, including my own daughter as a police officer, she has no idea what she's walking into as she approaches a car. She has no idea this guy just committed a murder. So these cops typically are being shot at first. When I look at this statistic, this is how it makes sense to me. They're being shot at first. They're drawing their weapon. They're shooting back. That person's moving, trying not to get killed, and trying to kill the cop. The cop is moving, trying not to get killed, and trying to return fire after being shot at first. There's a big dynamic there. There's a lot of bullets flying around, and very few of them are finding their mark. Now, okay, then how in the world are these active shooters, these mass shooters that are untrained, every other bullet that comes out of their gun is finding its mark? How is that possible? It's because we aren't moving. Cho walks into the room at Virginia Tech, opens fire. People move as far away as they can. Maybe it's 30 feet to the corner of the room.
Freeze.
They're stuck. They got nowhere to go. Columbine, kids hit under desks. So now they're being shot from 2 feet away with a rifle. How do you miss? I've seen the video, okay, from New Zealand. People ran to the corner. It was literally bodies piled up in the corner, and he just shot into the mass of people. They had nowhere else to go. I'm not blaming them. What I'm saying is nobody's moving. They've only moved as far as they can get, and now a wall or some other obstacle stopped them, so they've literally huddled and just hoping not to be shot or waiting to be shot, whatever the case may be. So the shooters are shooting people that are close range and are not moving. And that's why they're having this, nationally, they're having a 50% hit ratio. It's crazy. And that's where I come back to our point of, look, they're shooting at close range. They can only shoot one person at a time. There are a lot more people at close range than have attacked them, historically speaking, that could have. So we are trying to get the message out. This is how you survive. It might seem counterintuitive, but this is how you survive.
That's really interesting that it's almost the natural response to freeze.
Okay.
And then there's no, it's
Let
just
me-
blank.
let me-
Or there's like this, or you're hiding, or you think you're hiding, but
Yeah.
you're like the little kid that's like, if I don't see you, then you can't see me.
Okay,
know?
I have a question for you, Lynn. I think it goes back to something else that you said where we shut down.
Yeah, I agree.
Where we go, oh shit. Like
This
it's
is-
literally like, oh shit. Because let me tell you an experience I just had, and I think this guy speaks for a lot of people. I spoke to a group of almost 200 people in like West Jordan or something like that, Utah, a couple months ago. And in the group, there was a guy, and you know, we're in Mormon country, so he definitely had to be a grandpa, even though he was probably only 45 or 50 years old, right? It just happens because we have kids young here. But he was really fit, and he about 6 foot. I mean, he was just a big dude. And we were talking about this exact thing that you and I are talking about right now, about the distance and the accuracy, and nobody's fighting back. And he's like, hey, man. Now I was about 12 feet from him. He goes, hey, man, Dave, I'm sorry, but even at this distance, I feel I'm fairly close to you. You point an AR at my chest, and I'm just like, oh, shit. I got a lot of stuff I didn't fix before you killed me. That's what his mind went to. He's like, it's over.
Whoa.
It's over. He's like, honestly, how am I going to do anything to you? Now, granted, he put himself right in front of my muzzle in his scenario.
Right.
Okay? And I said, all right. I said, do you have grandkids? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how old? Well, one of the kids was 6. I'm like, that's perfect. You know, that's a grandpa's favorite age. Right in there. They're just learning how to fish and do fun stuff with their grandpa. I said, okay, so your 6-year-old grandson is right here. And I pointed about 8 feet to his right. And I said, and I point my AR at him. He stood up out of his chair right there in the seminar. He's like, hey, he didn't even like that I used his grandson as an example. He got really upset. I'm like, are you just going to stand there or are you going to do something about it? And then he got really angry. And he's like, dude, what I would do to you? And I said, okay, why is that kid's life more valuable than yours? This comes back to the river. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could fight back. But if your kid fell in the river, without a question, you jump in. Without thought. Because there's a 1 in a million chance that you could make it. You could save that kid, so you go. Why is your life less valuable in this situation than that child's? We don't value ourselves the same way we value other people. So what I'm telling people is good. If you can't do that, if you can't make that jump psychologically, then do this. Just know the grief and the heartache and the pain your grandson will suffer at your funeral. Would you allow anyone to hurt your grandson psychologically or physically? No, you wouldn't. So, okay, get in your head right now. You survive for your kids. And people can do that a little easier because you nailed it earlier in this conversation where you said we get to a place where we just like shut down. We don't even want to think about it. And I'm not accepting that on behalf of all of you. I'm not accepting it because you're capable. It's in your DNA to be that person that without hesitation jumps into the fray.
It's like we've programmed ourselves that once we reach a certain limit that there's just no more information, so it's just shut down.
I think there's no more information, Lynn, or you don't think you're going to survive past it, so you don't even want to think about it.
And we talked about Lieutenant Colonel Grossman's book a little bit, but I think it's not necessarily the fear that you won't live past it. It's the fear that you don't have what it takes to meet the challenge.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that's where I think our theory, and I'll always come back to the mom in the river, child in the river, I think our theory crushes all of the doubt. Because we know that people do it under the right circumstances.
Right. At that point, it's
a different circumstance.
It's not even you don't even question it.
Yeah, there's no time to
here's the thing.
Through.
It's like which approach do you take? So, but if you find yourself in that moment where you're starting to freeze, if you're already starting to freeze,
Here's how we do
then
it.
you're hesitating.
Right. Here's how we do it.
But you don't want to hesitate.
No.
So then how do so you have to think about it ahead of time.
Right now. See, that's
Yes.
it. You answered your own question.
I don't think there's any other option than to think about it ahead of time.
You just answered your own question, and on behalf of everyone that's listening to this, there's going to be a certain percentage that are going to say that I can't see myself doing it, or maybe they're asking, how do I train myself to do it? Well, because of this podcast, for example, someone that didn't hear this yesterday is now going to walk away going, I'm going to start thinking through situations and saying, I can do it, I would do it.
Yes, exactly.
We have to do that.
Well, and when I was reading this book, I had the thought that this happens to us on a regular basis. This is how we live our life. It's you being scared or not wanting to do the things you wanted to do is all about you not thinking that you have what it takes to meet that challenge. But if in every moment you notice it's a challenge, you recognize there's a piece of something that's a challenge, and then you can boost your own confidence by taking time to realize you can meet different challenges.
Yeah.
And that the more that they come along, I mean, David Goggins talks a lot about this, or you talked about this the last time when you were talking about take 5 things that challenge you and knock them all out of the park, do every single one of them. The more that you have this arsenal of, I can step up to this challenge, I can do this challenge, the more that you have that foundation and know that you're meeting challenges, then another one comes along and it's just another time for you to act.
Yeah.
Instead of being in a constant state of shying away from challenges because you're too scared that you can't rise to what it requires in you.
I think your perspective is awesome, and let me elaborate on what I think, what I interpret as to what you're saying. So growing up, and I don't know if you did this too, but I think most people grow up, we have fantasies in our head of us accomplishing something great. So if you're a girl and it's dancing, or like with one of my daughters, she went on to become an amazing college soccer player. So in her mind, it was athletics, some scoring goals, and maybe it's a dance, or maybe it's someone wanting to, do really good. They always do really good in school, and that's how they actually have a school fantasy of being smart. I don't know. That was never mine. But I'm alpha, So, I would think of, well, if this happens, I would do this. As a young cop, I was always like, worst case scenario, how would I win? Right? Because you know what? It's not human nature to do worst case scenario, how would I lose? We don't want to think about a scenario where we lose. Mm-hmm. So if you start thinking about something that you're not good at or you're uncomfortable with, you're wasting a bunch of time thinking about it because you don't see yourself winning. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is why would you spend time going over a scenario where you're like, I'm not even equipped to do that mentally.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to think about it, which means when something does happen, you're done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're in what we call condition black. You're just like
condition
frozen.
Black. Yes, there's nothing there. It's all shut
so
down.
my challenge this week is think about something that scares the crap out of you like that, especially when we talk about these things like a mass shooting, and say, all right, look, you're not going to be at ground zero with the shooter right away. Let's just say that's how you picture it in your mind. Okay, I'm not going to go right to worst, where it's me and him face to face. But I do hear the gunfire. I am in the mall, and I am with my grandson. And I've already paid attention to the exits, and I get him. We're out of there so quick. We're actually telling other people, turn around, go this way, because I've been paying attention. Isn't that a cool thought? You just empowered yourself. And I guarantee you, next time you're at the mall or at Walmart or wherever you're going to pay a little more attention, and you're going to feel empowered because you're already taking a step to eliminate the unknown and take yourself one step closer to actually recognizing that you do have power over yourself and the situation. But you got to start somewhere. This podcast, for a lot of people, is going to be where they start. And let's see what they do tomorrow. Or maybe tonight after they hear it, whenever they go to the store. They start looking around, they just start saying, hey, I'm going to increase my situational awareness because it's going to give me an advantage. Fantastic. So You're absolutely right. It's that mindset. We have to practice thinking of the scenarios we don't want to think about and seeing ourselves win somehow, even if it's a little win, even if it's not fighting the gunman right now in your mind. Just start with, I know how to escape. Perfect. That's great, because that's the most likely scenario, is that you're going to hear gunfire before you see it, and you're not going to panic. You're not going to shut down.
Right. There's at least something you can do, and you already know that there's something you can do, and you've already programmed it so that it's not a black wall in your mind, but it's actually a route. There's a pattern in place.
Yep. And think of how cool you feel if you're the person out there going, and this just isn't me. It's just something I'm really struggling to wrap my head around, that I could do it. Think about how you would feel if you said, I'm going to make an effort, and I am going to at least know exits. And then, heaven forbid, something happens, and even though you were shopping by yourself that day, you grabbed a lady next to you and you said, go this way. And you guys got out together. She's going to say thank you. And that's all she's going to remember, is that some gal that wasn't in shock grabbed her and said, come this way, and helped her get out. That's what she's going to remember. She's going to tell her grandkids that story. And that's just one person that you kept from having an even more tragic day. Because everyone there is going to have some form of residual traumatic effect. But hers is going to be a lot less than it would have been if she'd have ran the wrong way. At least in her mind. I mean, these are cool things. When we help other human beings, we do a lot better things for ourselves.
Yes. Just like you were talking about with the grandchild type scenario.
Exactly.
Where you think you immediately changed his response, where at one point he was like, I'm done for. And then it's like, well, what if I'm pointing it? And then you don't even have to finish what you're saying.
Yeah.
And he's like...
He wanted to fight me, actually. He was really upset.
Just the thought of it, just talking about it, infuriated him. And so I think if we can learn to take on that type of responsibility, and I think it's important what you're saying too, is we have to do it almost in thinking about others. So instead of being like, if I'm in an active situation, what am I going to do for myself? It's, if I'm in an active shooter situation, I'm obviously going to be in a public place. There's obviously going to be other people around me, and I can train and do something now so that I can be a benefit to those around me.
I love it.
I think that is really important.
You summed that up so well. Thank you. Good job.
I think it's really important, because otherwise people don't take on the responsibility. If it's just for them, if it's just for me, I think it's the same thing
we
with
do it in our daily
health,
lives. Oh,
with
yeah.
our, like if my exercise is just impacting me, then who cares? Then why should I do it? But if you can find a greater need of how it is serving or helping others, so that it's not just about you, it's got a lot stronger of an emphasis to it, and there's more motivation in your actions. It's just the way it is.
And Lynn, you know me well enough now. We've had some pretty deep conversations, both in the podcast and outside of them. You know how I think, and nothing makes me sadder than to look around and see people that I think are amazing. People, I mean, I try and give everyone the benefit of the doubt when I meet them, that I'm just meeting an amazing person, until they prove otherwise. But what just makes me sad and blows me away is we, generally speaking, I'm generalizing, we don't put value on ourselves. We value everybody else around us way more than us. We think everybody around us is better and stronger and prettier and all of these things. And so when a guy points a gun at us, I think some people are like, okay, get it over with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I got what I deserve. So I think that we will learn to feel better about ourselves when we overtly commit an action every day that benefits someone else, especially if it's a perfect stranger.
But isn't that ironic that to feel better about ourselves, we do things for other people?
It's ironic in this society. It's ironic in this
Yeah.
society. I agree with you 100%.
And I would also say that I think that what we're talking about ironically comes around to speaking to the likelihood of what I think the active shooter's feeling, because I don't think that they act out like that if they're trying to, if they feel connected.
No,
right?
you're absolutely right.
They've cornered themselves off so far.
Yeah, we don't, that's an interesting thing. And again, the book that you're reading right now on killing, he sheds some light on that. He talks about sociopaths and psychopaths. And it's interesting to me because we have two different types of active shooters right now in the U.S. We have terrorists. So just to give you an idea, like when I say that, people are like, what are you talking about? Well, all right, Orlando, the nightclub shooting, that guy was an Islamic extremist. And he went in there to murder as many gay people as he could. He shot over 100 people, okay? What about 2015 in the Christmas party in San Bernardino, where an Islamic extremist couple, okay, went in and tried to murder all these people at the Christmas party, and then it was their intent that while the police responded there, they would go to the mall and murder a bunch of people that were Christmas shopping. And they were, intercepted by the police and had a huge gunfight. That's a different type of active shooter. The people that have that terrorist mentality, they don't kill themselves when the police arrive. They want a gunfight with the police. They'll shoot it out with the cops. They're extremely violent. And though that gunfight is going to last a lot longer than your typical active shooter when law enforcement arrives, it's a fairly quick ending. A lot of times they kill themselves, especially the school shooters. But the reason I'm kind of going into this is because, there have been theories out there about the profiles of active shooters, and very few of them have scientific backing, and statistically they're not holding water. We have such a myriad of different people that are committing these things. So, we don't know what the deal is with the shooter in Vegas yet. I don't know if we're going to ever find out. But, the school shooters, they seem to fit some profiles with, in some professionals in psychology have profiled them. Maybe they've had more success there, but outside of that, it just depends. They are sociopathic, or maybe they're a psychopath, or maybe they're a dude that just snapped. I mean, we just had a shooting at Virginia Beach. I don't know. The guy resigned and then came in and opened fire. I've been involved with a couple cases where people have snapped, at work. Then, as I've told you before, and I don't know if we mentioned in the last podcast, by a unique circumstance, I happened to be close by when they had the shooting at the Sutherland Springs Baptist Church in Texas, where the guy shot, I think, over 50 people in the chapel or in the church, and he was reloading outside when a civilian ran from his home, jumped the fence with no shoes on, and engaged the shooter. And in my opinion, saved the lives of the people that were wounded and survived because he was loading to go back in. That was a family issue. That started over a domestic thing. So we it's weird because we've had so many of these, and they don't all fit into a category. So, I don't know. And nothing that you and I are talking about, because we are not spending time on prevention, right? And everyone has a theory on the preventative programs. You and I are focused on surviving. Right. What can we do to survive? How can we overcome this? And then, there's...
And how can we help maybe the person next to us survive?
Yeah. See, this is what I love. If there's a silver lining around tragedy, it's this. Tragic circumstances, people emerge from them that do things they didn't even know they were capable of.
Yeah.
But they felt compelled to protect a perfect stranger at the peril of their own life. They felt compelled to help a perfect stranger. We see this in all these incidents. To me, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's a cool thing. But the message I want nationally, what I would love to be a part of, is a national shift in the way that we think. We are a nation of victims right now. I mean, we have all these different groups that are popping up. They're being victimized. Some of it's racial, some of it's, gender, some of it's, people are making shit up to be offended about. And so people want to sit on the ground and cry because they didn't get their way. Adults, this is happening. We are going further and further away from a culture of, I will fight for what's mine. Like, I will physically fight for what's mine. We've moved away from that, where we are submissive to anybody that we think has power. And that's not how this country was created. It's the opposite. We got to a point where we were sick of it. And so people, brothers, cousins, were picking sides in a civil war to protect rights, human rights for certain people. And, same thing with, when we had our Revolutionary War, people were saying, we're not going to let you tell us what to do anymore. We're going to protect. We've moved here to live the way we want to live and enjoy the freedoms we want. This nation was founded on these people fighting back, even giving up their own lives. It wasn't about them. It was about the family members behind them, the generations that would come being free. And we've moved to the opposite end of the spectrum now. And so my part of this is on the active shooter. I'm going to focus on that. I'm not all the other stuff I mentioned. I'm going to focus on this. We don't have to let a guy with a gun win. We don't. And so we can be prepared, have a plan, which is also empowering and healthy. And then if it goes down, go for it. Just act.
I think that's one of the biggest pieces, is just being able to see somebody with a gun and not think that they have all the power and control.
Yeah, no question. And that's a hard sell. That's a hard thing to say to somebody.
And it's not that they don't have some sort of power or control because of the weapon that they're holding.
Right.
And there's a certain amount that you do need to respect, that the weapon is present and the person can use it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you give up or that you totally acquiesce to whatever there's always something you can do.
These kids, the kid that saved his classmates at UNC campus, Charlotte, North Carolina, didn't even hesitate. That just blows my mind. I love it. He's a hero. There's no question about it. Anyone that knew him said, yeah, that doesn't surprise us. That warms my heart. But he's not the only one. There's a lot of people like him. We just need to remind everybody that DNA is in all of us. He didn't do it for himself. He wasn't trying to stay alive. He was trying to save others. And then classmates helped. And then I think of, okay, we're all impressed. This is a young college guy. And then you have these kids at a high school that do it 24 hours later. And the same exact thing, seniors in high school.
The more that you see it happen, the more likely you are to do it yourself. It's like that the first person that goes to tackle the shooter is almost the most courageous, because once it's seen.
Yep.
And I had Lynn Christian, she was on the last episode, she said, you're at least 10% more likely to reach your goal if you've witnessed somebody else do it. I love that. That's so true, though. Yeah. So just witnessing it, there's a boost of power that comes from it.
You want to know one of the coolest things that you're bringing up that, again, I told you before we started this, I love how your questions are very insightful and a lot of your perspective is awesome. I think of one of the most powerful phrases ever uttered in my lifetime was the phrase, let's roll. It gives me goosebumps right now. Let's roll. Some dude on an airplane said, they're not going to crash this airplane into the White House, or he didn't know where, but they're not going to crash this airplane into their target. He got a bunch of people on the airplane with him, and they said, let's take this plane back. And he says, let's roll. And to me, it's like, those dudes knew that the chances of them surviving were probably not very good, but they knew they were going to save lives. And they weren't going to be victims. They weren't going to go down without a fight. Gosh, dang it. What's wrong with the rest of us that just want to complain? Don't complain about your circumstance. Prepare for a defining moment in your life and then execute if it happens. And if it doesn't happen, you're going to live an amazing life because you're going to live prepared. And that's empowering.
So there's the motivation where I was talking about working out, and if it's always about you, then it's easy to quit early or to give up or to not do it. But if you are preparing because there could be a moment where you need your strength to help others, to
100%.
protect others. If you could need to be able to run to help protect others or to be there for others, that's why you run. And so all of that's defining and helping, like, you know that you can do that as a way to serve, then that's empowering your movement.
No question. No, I love that you said that. And I don't want to make an extreme example of that, but you're an Air Force person, and I think of PJs. A lot of people don't even know what a PJ is. I mean, these guys are like tip of the spear,
Absolutely.
badasses. Their job is to go in the most hostile environment on the planet and rescue people.
Right.
Like maybe a group of SEALs gets in a helicopter crash.
Right.
Someone's got to go into enemy territory and get these guys. That's the PJs that do that. It doesn't matter how badass special ops you are. If you got in a crash by enemy lines and you're messed up, they send these guys in. They're just, so you think about it, they're amazingly fit guys.
Yes.
Every ounce of strength or every ounce of energy they put into being physically fit is 100% on behalf of somebody else, someone they've never met. It's awesome. That's when they're done being PJs, they probably all just get fat. Because what's your motivation after that? That is like the most amazing motivation. Now I say that in jest because it's going to be in their DNA to always work out and always think, am I ready to help someone even if it's on I-15?
Yeah.
It could be anywhere, right?
Well,
and that's where it applies to us.
They've already gone through the mental process. So if they're on the civilian side and something happens around them, they're going to jump in.
They're going to jump in, 100%.
Right. And it's almost when we hear stories about those people that on the civilian side, it can be really easy to be like, well, those are the ones that need to take care of the situation. And if they are present, by all means, let them take care of the situation.
Right.
But there's also, it's worth looking into it enough to know, like, well, what if they're not? What if there aren't some off-duty PJs
exactly
that happen to be there? What if there isn't the off-duty Army infantry? If they're not there, then you might be your child's only hope, or you might be somebody else's child's.
Okay,
only hope.
Thank you, Lynn. You nailed it. I think, to me, the group I'm most concerned about is outside of the whole active shooter thing, because it's all of us, right? It could affect any one of us. But the group outside of that I think would benefit the most from gaining knowledge and having a plan always are young moms. Because, and again, I'm generalizing, so, but I think of a young mom or a single mom, it doesn't matter, because where I'm going with this is whether you're a single mom or a young mom with a husband who works a regular job, you're out, you're trying to manage more than one kid under 10 years old. That is a full-time job where you're at. That's like being a lifeguard in a crowded pool. Even if you're at the park, even if you're at Costco,
Absolutely.
Wherever you are. So you're responsible for these two kids that don't want to stay together. And then something goes down and you're going to have to gather them up and move to safety.
Right.
If you don't have a plan ahead of time, then that's going to be a code, that's going to be a condition black moment when you could only grab one and the other one is running the opposite direction because they're freaked out. I'm just saying, have a plan and you won't have that.
Which reminds me, because I wanted to bring this up when you were talking about it, you did that with your family.
Yes. So we've always had a plan with the kids. My biggest fear was, and it did happen to me once, was that I would be in a place like a mall and I would encounter somebody that I'd arrested. And I did have an encounter with someone that I had arrested, and it wasn't just him, it was him and the rest of his, probably 6 gang members. And I had my girls with me now. Everybody in our family knew if Dad said run, they ran. If I said meet me at the car, they knew to go right to the car and just wait. If I said duck, they ducked. We just had the plan was whatever they were told, if it was quick, they would just do it without saying, well, why? I don't understand. And so it's good to always have a plan ahead of time that the kids, and practice it, by the way. Don't just tell them this. Practice it. We had fun. My kids loved it. We'd go out and I'd be like, okay, guys, at some point today while we're out, I'm going to give you the duck run, whatever. Be ready. And they ate it up. Thought it was fun, but they got really good at it. So, then I did have an incident and everything ended fine, but I saw them coming. They eyeballed me. I told my daughters, get behind me. Both my daughters got behind me immediately. And, at that point, my hand was on my gun. And as the guys approached me and started talking smack, I was able to de-escalate it pretty quickly. But the only thing I wasn't going to send my daughters off running when I got 6 gangbangers and 2 of them could peel off after my kids. Now we're separated.
Sure.
Nah. I put them behind me. My body was my shield. And I had a plan of who was getting shot first. But it didn't come down to that. But the fact was that they were just instant. And when it was all said and done, they didn't think too much of it. Matter of fact, it didn't, scar them or anything like that. It was de-escalated pretty quickly. And to this day, they probably couldn't even remember it. But there was a plan. And by the way, as a cop, I've responded on things, and I've seen families that have had plans, and it's amazing how well they've done. They make great witnesses because you're there to see like what happened. And, I got a dad, for example, that's like, we heard these shots, we did this, I got my family here, and we took off, and then that car came running through the intersection. And anyway, they had a good plan. The family reacted, everybody was safe, and they gave great information after the fact. So.
Did you have a similar plan for your wife?
Absolutely, yeah. She was part of this plan the whole time. So
when she was out with your kids, she had a similar.
Danielle was very hyper aware of the surroundings because, I always worried if someone knew where my family is. As a matter of fact, my kids were fairly young when I had transferred. I was in Seattle. There was a criminal that committed a bank robbery, and I happened to be the guy that tackled him and arrested him. And he took offense to that and literally was telling, we had confidential informants that were buying dope, and they were coming back to King County Sheriff's Office and going, do you have a cop named Dave Acosta? And they're like, yeah, why? And like, he's literally going to kill the officer. He's going to find his family and kill him and the family. And so the CIs, confidential informants, were so concerned that they were telling officers. And so it ended up becoming this big thing. We had undercover people hiding at our house all day, 24 hours a day, for 4 days until we caught the guy. So, you just never know. So we were always trying to be extra aware just in case. But that's an extreme example, and maybe that's just the life of a cop, or maybe I was just a jerk. People didn't like me. I don't know.
Because honestly, the truth is, you were in a career that you chose to put yourself in danger's way. And the average person who doesn't choose that as a career or as a life path, that doesn't mean that they don't have to think about it, because the chances that in this world we live in, there's a possibility that danger's way will find its way to them.
10 days ago in Spanish Fork at the park, right behind Costco. 10 days ago. 2 guys tried to lure a kid into a van. The mom was there with her kids. She screamed. Luckily, her husband was there. He ran over and confronted them, got his kids back, and one of the 2 men, one is in his 30s and the other guy's close to 40. They're like 3 years apart, 35 and 38-year-old brothers. This is the 3rd incident Spanish Fork Police has had with them. Like this. And they attacked the father because he confronted him about trying to lure his kid into the van.
Wow.
Now think about the mom. So that night we did an impromptu Instagram live that I spoke on this, because what ended up happening is all these moms are like, we're at the park all the time without our husbands, and we're juggling 3 kids. Right. And 2 adult men come up. So what was the question? The question was, which kid do I protect? You know? And that's a whole nother thing. It's, you know, I tell people, you scream for help and don't let anyone take your child, and you get between your kid and those guys, and you fight. You physically fight. You know, you have to.
It makes me think of Owen Wilson on Shanghai Noon, where he says, I don't know karate, but I know crazy, and
yeah.
I'm not afraid to use it.
Well, that's a mom. That's a mom as soon as you touch her
kids.
kids.
To be. Yeah, like I'll use crazy. Because the thing is, this is once again, it's kind of like when we're talking about the meat counter and there's like something that's socially unacceptable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But in that situation, we've been so trained by what's socially acceptable that we don't care, that when we're in that situation, we're still trying to be socially acceptable.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more.
If you just start flailing your arms or making the weirdest noises possible, or just like
you physically
doing all sorts of weird things that you would never think you would do in real life, that person might be like, whoa, what is going on with this person, and scare them enough that they don't want to deal with you.
I would tell you, Lynn, physically defend yourself. One of the things that I teach women is that it's interesting to me how quickly women unite. If you got a mom screaming because someone's grabbing her kid and there's other moms around, dude, they're coming.
Yeah. They
are coming. And we've had those experiences. And so, you know, we come to each other's aid, especially women to women. And so I tell people, that's a technique for you. Start screaming right away, help me, help me. He's grabbing my kid. Tell the whole world.
Yeah. See
who jumps in to help you out. You know, we want to help each other. We do. And I think that most people are paranoid because they believe that when they're out there, they're on their own. You're not on your own. You're not on your own. I was telling in this presentation, I told moms, I'm like, when you go to the park, one of the techniques that you need to use, a preventative technique, is you go to the park with your kids and there's other moms there and you don't know any of them, introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Right now. Because you're not a stranger. Say, oh, hi, I haven't seen you here before. Do you come here often? Hi.
Start talking to people.
Yeah, my name's Lynn. I live over there. And you just establish a relationship and they're like, oh, hi. And you're talking, and then if anyone comes in to that circle, there's a bond between those moms that's been reinforced by a conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, there's strength in numbers. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. We need each other in this life. We need each other all the time. People have to just accept that and embrace it. And if you do, your life will get better. Too many of us are trying to do it on our own. It doesn't work. That's a shitty path.
It is.
So it's a lonely, depressing path, and it's not necessary.
I think that's almost like the universal sign that the fact that it's lonely and depressing is like the universe telling you that you're going the wrong direction. You know,
yeah.
You gotta move towards people and engage and connect.
We need people.
We do.
We need each other. And there's power in that. And that's how we overcome all these wackos. We unite, get on the same page, and this stuff, eventually, we subdue it. We'll take control.
That was the perfect ending point. I don't even want to say anything else.
Yeah, no, I think we could end right there.
Anyway, Dave Acosta. Oh, and you have a podcast now. So speaking of your platform and getting your voice out, and you're talking more about these type of topics and mindset, and so if people want just more of you and your thoughts and insight and mindset, they can look you up looking up the Fight Back Nation podcast.
Yes, you tell them because you know more about it than me. Guys, I have a podcast because Lynn inspired me to do it. And so she's also helping me get it set up and get it out there. So Lynn, tell them where they can find me.
Well, that, like I said, you search the Fight Back Nation podcast, and yeah. So we'll have a link to it. We'll put a link to it
Awesome.
in the show notes. So we'll make it easy that way. But thank you again for being on the show. It's always been great. So
yeah, it's fun talking with you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and found a new mindset to help you excel. For more information on Dave Acosta and links to his work online, visit www.tamfpodcast.com/fightback.